Welcome to Run With It, BC's only running, fitness, and health show. On this episode, we have coverage of the 8th annual SOS Children's Village Run and Walk. Plus, we're in conversation with Canada's fastest sprinter, Andre De Grasse. Andre De Grasse competed in both the 100 and 200 meter events at the Vancouver Sun International Heritage Road Track Classic. De Grasse is one of the fastest sprinters in the world, and he competed in front of a 6,000 plus record crowd at Swan Guard Stadium. Plus, we're in conversation with Olympic hopefuls Chris Winter and Rachel Clift. And we're in conversation with Jason Beck, BC Sports Hall of Fame curator and author of The Miracle Mile. But first, let's go to our interview with two-time Olympian Katrina Lemaine-Doan. Check this out. Welcome to Run With It, Katrina. I'm so excited to have you on the show, and I wanted to ask you, as a former Olympic speed skater, do you miss competing?
I don't miss the stress of competing at all. I miss the routine of that. I miss the fact that there were the stresses, but I knew what stresses they were. Now with, I guess what I would call real life.
And it's more of you have a family now, and it's not so structured, right? I mean, it is structured having a family, but as you said, your training is so structured and rigid. And
that's right. Having my son Easton is 9, my daughter Greta is just about to turn 12. So it's busy, and as any mom knows, it's busy trying to drive kids around, trying to get groceries, suppers, laundry, and then add on top of that work, and then add on top of that trying to get active and stay active. So everybody knows that we're all really busy. So there isn't the structure of knowing exactly what the day is going to bring, but I love that.
How do you maintain your fitness or a healthy lifestyle these days?
Well, it takes discipline. It takes a time management, which I'm not always the best person for. And I think, as every mom knows, once in a while, we have to be a little bit selfish. And that's not a bad thing. We know how busy it is, right? We know the first and foremost things we need to take care of our family. But once in a while, we put ourselves to the sidelines, and we have to say, you know what? Mommy needs a little bit of me time. And even if that's going out and walking the dogs, even if that's saying, you know what? You guys are okay, or come with me, ride your bike while I go for a run, or I keep some weights in the garage. Sometimes it's just me setting up my little video so I can watch something and I don't have to think, and I sit in my stationery and do a few weights. That is what we have to do.
Tell us about your involvement with Unified Cares, and how does that work?
Well, at first I thought it was too good to be true. I think in our society we think, oh, somebody's giving us something for free. There has to be a catch. And when I learned about Unified Cares, the best thing is that there is no catch. It's free for every single Canadian. And what this program is literally you just sign up for a card at innovicares.ca, and when you get this number, this free card, you go to the pharmacist. And for me, it took a couple of years of admitting that I have issues with my feet, I have arthritis, because I felt I'm too young. I'm fit my whole life, my body's not going to give up on me, but it has broken down. So I had seen the doctors and gotten prescriptions, and then when I heard about Unified Cares, what it does is when you went to the pharmacist, I was able to stay on my brand name medication, and they would cover the cost. So it works with a private insurance, it works with your healthcare coverage, but it saved me money. And we understand in today's day and age, I mean, it's an expensive world that we live in, between activities, between groceries, between cost of living. So when we can save money, and yet we don't have to encounter change, especially with our healthcare routine, that for me was key.
I mean, we're going to talk about your stretching, right? But what are some of your favorite stretches?
Well,
you're going to demo for us?
Yeah, well, the thing is that you go to some of the basics, and a lot of people sitting have back issues, and a lot of people, they have knee issues. Well, usually some of the issues are brought on because you're too tight in other places. A big one for many people is glutes. And if you look at speed skating, I mean, okay, my glutes and my quads maybe aren't as big as they used to be, but that was where our source of strength was. And I find now that I'm not as strong and as maybe bulky muscle, I'm not as balanced, and we let things go. Core is a big one, and everything we do has to do with the core, and I forget. But if you start looking at different stretches, it depends on the person. Regardless of what activity you do, whether you're running or biking, calves is always a big part of a stretch. And for me, especially with some feet issues, you start tensing different ways and your calves get tight. So one of the biggest things is to make sure and hold stretches for 30 seconds. We do get bored, and so I would always lean wherever you are, and you don't need any equipment, is to make sure and hold a stretch. And calves does so much for all parts of you. So again, I would hold each of those for 30 seconds, and then you can bring over to a step. And I want to make sure you can do any of these at your desk, wherever you are, and you can just stand on a step and just let your heel drop. And again, holding it for 30 seconds. As I mentioned, glutes is always a big issue. Glutes can lead to IT band problems, which can lead to knee problems. Glutes tie into your lower back, which all of us probably have lower back issues, sitting too much, and a lot of that has to do with core. So again, you don't need to have a mat. You can sit on a bench, you can be anywhere, and just sitting down, and you can do this at your desk, which is one of the best things, and just bring your leg over and hug your knee. And you will feel the stretch on your glute. Sometimes it's more hip. So after you do this one for 30 seconds, again, you can do this at a desk, you can do it at home in front of the TV, on the couch, and just push your knee down and you will feel the hip stretch. Holding those. And when you have a distraction, then you don't feel rushed in time. Another thing I talk about are shoulders. So all of these stretches that you do for your upper body, you want to make sure that you stay loose, that you don't keep the tension, that you keep your core strong. And one of the biggest ones is never to stretch your ligaments. You want to stretch the muscles. So you put your arm behind your back to put it in neutral position. Just put your fingers on your clavicle and go to look up. And already I can feel a stretch on my neck. Rather than taking your head and doing this and pulling it where it might be ligaments, again, you just want to look up, keep your core tight, try to keep this muscle loose. Doing some of those basic stretches wherever you are will help loosen you up, and the tension that you have, that we all have everywhere, every single day, you start to feel the blood flow. And you can do those after your warm-up, after you're done some exercise, or again, just sitting and trying to stay and keep loose.
The 8th annual SOS Children's Village Run. Over 150 participants took part in the 10K, 5K, and 2K family walk. It was a great event, and there were lots of smiling faces at the end.
The SOS Children's Run, Roll, Stroll, which is just exactly what it is a very family-friendly event out here on the dike in Richmond along the wonderful Fraser River, where we get a chance to have all our friends and family come out and support SOS. We have 2 levels. We have our village, which right now consists of 12 homes and 45 children. They receive our top level intensive supports. We then have our outreach programs, which is our homework learning club and our community music program for foster children living elsewhere in the community, and we reach just about 600 kids through those programs.
With me in the studio are 2 special guests. Chris Winter is a Canadian middle distance runner who has competed internationally on a number of national teams in track and field, cross country, and road running. His specialty is the 3,000 meter steeplechase. And we have Rachel Cliff, also a Canadian middle distance runner, and her specialty is the 5,000 meters. They're Olympic hopefuls, and they're also husband and wife. They're here to talk about what they hope will be their road to Rio. Welcome to the show, Chris and Rachel.
Thanks for having us.
Happy that you're here. And how special is it to be a professional running couple?
Oh, I mean, we love it. It definitely takes someone to be a couple. You got to understand what we're going through, and by her being a runner, she understands the stresses that I go through, and vice versa. So we're able to support each other and motivate each other, run with each other, and we're able to share the highs and lows together.
And also, you talk about it, but you also send a tweet, say, "Great race, Rachel."
Yeah.
For sure, yeah, you definitely build on each other a little bit in that way, and yeah, definitely. I've learned a lot about the sport just from Chris, and I hope you've learned a lot from me too. Just seeing someone take the sport from a different angle is
Yeah,
really
and also
helpful.
about meal preparation too, right? You sort of help each other with types of food to eat, and coffee, you drink coffee, we talked about earlier off camera. So, but when did your passion begin for running? I know it was 9 years old when you started.
Yeah, we got into it different ways, but for me it was from a really young age. But I started when I was 9 years old, just through elementary school track and field, and it was one of those things I fell into pretty easily and had some success with it from a young age. And success spurred me on to keep doing it, and I joined a track club pretty quickly afterwards. And I was a part of the Northwestern Track and Field Club, which is in North Vancouver, and I was with them all the way through high school. And it was just one of those things that, for me as a young kid, it was my social activity. It was what I did on the weekends. It was who my friend group was. So it was just a lot of fun. It wasn't necessarily this really stressful, really high competitive thing. It was just the fun sport that I participated in.
And
I got into it a little bit later, kind of a different story from Chris. I started when I was in grade 10, grade 11.
Wow.
I always did it as a kid. I loved running, but I never joined a track club or anything. But also, like Chris, as I got into it, I saw success quickly and kind of stayed with it.
Exactly. Now I'm curious to know, how did you 2 meet?
It's kind of
running, but
it's funny. So technically speaking, we met at a training camp in Whistler. So my first year in the sport, I did a cross-country camp in grade 11 up at Whistler with Chris's high school coach. And Chris was in first year university, and he came in as a counselor. So there's actually a photo of us together at that camp, but we didn't talk because he was the university student and I was the high school student.
Yeah.
We met again in Guelph a few years later. So I went to the University of Guelph, and Chris joined up post-collegiately to run professionally there. Mm-hmm. And that was where we officially
so we met up there, and then moved back to Vancouver a couple of years afterwards.
And the rest is history.
Exactly, as they say, yeah.
But do you train together? I mean, do you go for runs?
We do. Actually, we went for a run yesterday together. So we run quite a bit. My track club that I'm a part of is actually based out of Ontario still. It's the Speed River Track Club, whereas Rachel's team is here in Vancouver. So I do a lot of my running on my own. So anytime I get a chance, I'll definitely try to run with Rachel, just to give me some company and partner out on the trails.
It's awesome to have that special relationship. And how do you balance being such a high-performance athlete and work?
It's definitely
it's a tough
It's a real
balance,
struggle.
yeah.
But yeah, here in Canada, it's really challenging to be a quote unquote professional runner and to make a living wage that allows you to live in a city like Vancouver. So we both try to supplement as much as possible. And I've been working for a marketing company that's actually based out of Ontario for the last 6 years. That's really helped me to continue with the sport for as long as I have. And they've given me the flexibility to train when I need to and travel when I need to. And
I took a different path. I found it's also important to have balance, firstly financially, but also just psychologically. Like, it's just focusing on running, I found, is a lot. So I've really enjoyed doing other things on the side. I completed my master's just recently, but I spread it out over 3.5 years instead of doing it just over 2, and I found that gave me a bit more flexibility to keep running and to also pursue my academics.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And you know, training, how is your training different, than leading up to Rio? I mean, you train at a high performance level, but how is it different now leading up to Rio?
I think for me, what I've done differently this year is, again, finishing my master's. I've really just been focusing on running. Like, I've tried to do a few things on the side to stay busy. But for me personally, coming into this year, I tried really hard to focus on details. I've always trained hard, but I tried to focus more on hydration, sleep, nutrition, things that I probably dropped the ball a little bit when I was in my master's program. So I'd say that for me, that's been the biggest difference. But I mean, every year you're training as hard as you can. That doesn't really change.
For the way like my coach and I, we look at it is that it's not, it's kind of like one large training cycle. Like some people, over a course of a month would go through a different training cycle. We do the same thing over 4 years. So the Olympic year, you don't just train harder because it's the Olympic year. It's one long build up to this year. So, I was fortunate last year to run my Olympic standard, which allowed me to set up my year this year just a little bit differently. So I didn't have to be traveling around the world chasing a standard or a certain time. So I've been able to kind of more methodically pick which races I want to do so that can set me up best, both for our trials that are coming up in early July and then hopefully for the Rio Olympics.
And congratulations
Thank
on
you.
meeting the standard. And yourself, Rachel, tell us about your road to Rio.
I'm in the position that Chris is talking about where you're chasing the standards. So I'm very close in both the 5K and the 10K, which is exciting.
How close?
Very
close.
3% in the 10K and 0.6% in the 5K. So
awesome.
It's 6 seconds and 4 seconds, 5 seconds.
That's nothing.
So it's absolutely nothing, but it's exciting to be that close, but it's frustrating too because I mean for me doing a 10K it's over half an hour of racing. So to run for half an hour and then be 6 seconds off is exciting, but it means you have to go through the whole race all over again and faster to do it again. So.
And well, Rachel, you have the opportunity at the AC Championships or the trials, right? Is that coming
Probably
up?
not actually, because they're in Edmonton, which is a slight altitude. So for a speed runner, that doesn't matter. But for something like the 5K, it will be pretty challenging. But I have a few attempts at the 5K between now and then.
You'll make
so
it.
I'm hoping, really
You
hoping.
will make it.
I hope so.
And I want to thank you both for coming on the show. I'd like to have you come back after Rio. And thanks so much again. And we'll be right back after this break. Andre, how excited are you to be competing at the Heritage Run track meet?
I'm very excited. This is my first time at this meet, first time in Vancouver. So I'm happy to be here. I'm hoping for some good weather and, to drop down a time that to perform well.
Exactly. So you're originally from Markham, Ontario, right? And so will it be, do you think, a home meet?
Yeah, anywhere I run in Canada, I kind of treat it as a home meet. I appreciate Canada so much and, all the things that they've done, and they still admire me and still want me to bring back the gold for Rio. So I feel pretty good about that, and I'm just here and I'm excited and I'm happy to get a chance to run here for the first time.
We're looking forward to seeing you. And also, one more question. How important is nutrition in your preparations for the Olympics?
Yeah, it's very important. Nutrition plays a big role. Nutrition, recovery, sleep, all those things play a role. And when you're feeling good and you're eating right, that makes it a lot more easier when you're running.
One of our recent episodes, we had a contest for your chance to win a Yum cookbook by Dr. Teresa DeCasio. Our lucky winner is Lynn LaRose from White Rock. Congratulations, Lynn. Joining me in the studio is Jason Beck, BC Sports Hall of Fame curator and author of his first book, The Miracle Mile. Welcome to the show, Jason.
Thanks for having me, Christine.
And congratulations on your book or stories of the 1954 British Empire Games. And it is a page turner.
Yeah.
And it's not just for the sports fan. It's for athletes, everyone out there.
There's a little bit of everything in it for sure. I mean, there's not just athletic stories. There's history of Vancouver. There's stories of upsets and really significant victories, but also there's some sad stories and there's even a little bit of love and sex and rock and roll, and it has a little bit of everything. So it's for everybody, I think.
Yes, and I've read Doug Hepburn, who lifted 370 pounds, and I felt he was intriguing. That stuck out because, as you wrote, he's a complex character, and despite his foot, he had a club foot.
He had a club foot, yeah.
And despite that, he was the strongest man.
Yeah, the strongest natural man in the world at that time.
Natural, yeah.
This is before drugs really came into the sport. He was from Vancouver, overcame a lot. He had a club foot, he had crossed eyes, he really was a bit of I guess a bit of an underdog story, and he won the World Weightlifting Championships the year before the Games, and then came to Vancouver in his hometown and won gold, and was the only individual Vancouver athlete to win gold at these Games. But he's really had a really complex character. I mean, he loved attention. He was a bit of a showman, but he also was a bit repelled by it and almost felt alone in a crowd. He's definitely a fascinating figure.
Yes, and also there's the marathon, and that started at 12:30.
Yeah.
I mean, that was hot.
People said it was the hottest day of the year.
Yeah, and there was 18 athletes.
There were 16.
16, and the youngest was 18.
That's right, yeah.
And I
only
read
6 finished.
6 finished.
Yeah.
And there was no water.
Nope. There was 1 or 2 water stations along the route, but they were dry. It was so hot the water evaporated. So.
Oh my gosh. And then I also read about 3 athletes or marathoners, I should say, they smashed into a pole?
Yep. There was a lot of stories. Those guys that were running just totally exhausted, falling into ditches, hitting lampposts, hitting telephone poles. There were seasoned international racers like Gerard Cote, who's a Canadian, won the Boston Marathon several times in the 40s. He had never failed to finish a marathon in his career. He dropped out after 8 miles.
Oh my goodness.
Like, this was an incredibly hot day. Very, very tough course.
And what's sad is Jim Peters. I mean, he didn't finish.
That's right.
He tried 12 times.
Yeah.
And, I think generally people thought he was going to die.
Yeah. Well, I remember interviewing people, and they were saying, we thought we were watching a man run himself to death. And they actually were. He spent 5 days in hospital. He was not in a good way when they brought him there. He was, and he never ran again. I mean, he really did some damage to his health. Luckily, he recovered, but he was the world's fastest marathoner in history at that point, and it just went too hard, too fast on too hot of a day, and it made for this kind of tragic ending to the Games, ironically, just half an hour after
the Miracle
Mile. Yeah.
And there was like 35,000 spectators.
That we know of. There's all sorts
that you know of.
Yeah, well, there's 35,000 seating and standing room, but people were sneaking in all sorts of ways. It was upwards of 35,000. We'll never know how many people were there for sure.
But, incredible sports fans out there. And, what's the feedback been like so far?
To the book, it's been really strong. I've heard from people across Canada. I've heard from a couple writers that are well-known North American track and field writers that love it. They think it's good history, but also a good read, and that was kind of my goal. I wanted to make something that really was meaningful, that talked about this really important event for Vancouver and for BC and Canada, but also something that people could read and really, like you said, a page turner.
Yes, and it is indeed. And where can people buy the book?
Well, it's available in most bookstores now. It's also available at the BC Sports Hall of Fame. We've got copies there, and it's available online on the Hall of Fame's website, Caitlin Press as well, the publisher. Caitlin was fantastic putting this together. Vicki Johnston was amazing.
Well, I want to thank you very much, Jason, for coming on the show. I'd like
you.
to have you come back, and there might be another book out there.
Maybe
right?
there could be, yeah. Don't know what it'll be yet, but yeah, would love to come back.
That's great. Thanks for watching. We'll be right back. Thanks for watching. If you have a question or comment about today's show, go to our website on the screen. Until next time, run with it. Run With It is sponsored by Be Well TV, Hype Hair, Firma Energy Wear, Mallory's Fashion Network, Nike Canada, Skechers Performance Canada, Vancouver International Marathon Society, and West Coast Wellness and Skin Health Center.